Here, in the grounds of Kappa Hospital in Finglas West, this altar once stood on O'Connell Bridge for the Eucharistic Congress of 1932, where, in a very Catholic Ireland, at the dawn of its independence, hundreds of thousands of people gathered to hear Mass. On the outside wall of the altar, there's a small brass plaque that marks the work of local arts group Art Mart in restoring it from a state of decay. Art Mart is also the group behind this mural at the back of St. Kansas Church in Finglas Village. The paint is faded, but despite the mural's age, there's no sign of graffiti. My dad, Jim Cassidy, would have been delighted.
We did have a look at it and decided that it wouldn't be too difficult for a few of us to get onto it and repaint that section. And then the bigger section, hopefully in the future, we'll be able to carry on with that and revive the whole lot. And hopefully it will be a blessing to the people of Finglas.
He was the driving force behind Art Mart, and he was at the heart of the Finglas story from before the housing projects, when Finglas was a small village of whitewashed cottages, to just a few years ago when we laid him to rest under a Dublin granite field rock in Glasnevin Cemetery in the Tolka River Valley that he fought to protect. An artist by nature, a painter and decorator by trade, and like many of his time deeply religious, he painted murals and maintained religious sites around Finglas, at St. Patrick's Well and down the lane that runs behind St. Canice's Girls' School. I remember that his hand was a painter's hand, big and strong from wielding a 6-inch stock brush. It's one of the hands that is bound to the other Finglas hands in the spirit of Finglas sculpture, here outside what I first remember as the Casino Cinema, before it closed and became Superquin, where our family did most of our shopping, and finally today's SuperValu. My dad first came to Finglas in the 1940s, just after the war, and just before the housing schemes of the 1950s that saw the area explode from a farming community of green fields to a major Dublin suburb of corporation housing estates. He worked as a painter on those corporation houses in Finglas West, and he settled with my mum and their toddler, my older sister Martine, in this house on the North Road, now 134, but at the time Site 12 in 1956. This story, then, is told from the perspective of our family, most of whom were born into that Finglas house and grew up here, going to Mass in St. Canice's Church and attending the local schools. So despite the fact that Dad had our house covered in murals that made it stand out for what we kids thought at the time were all the wrong reasons, our story is a story of so many families who lived through the challenges and triumphs of building the strong community of today. It's a Finglas story. My dad first came to Finglas in the 40s to attend a céilí in the parochial hall that was being held to raise money for a monument to Dick McKee, a Finglas resident who had been killed while in British custody during the struggle for Irish independence. The parochial hall, or barn church as it was known, was the old church of Finglas before it was replaced by the existing St. Canice's Church in 1922. Despite attempts to have it restored, there was a fire, and apartments are now planned for this old Finglas heritage site. Most of old Finglas may be lost, but if you know where to look, traces remain, and there are old Finglas families that go back deep into its history. Among the newcomers, members of those families are still there, and their memories are long. To get a sense of the Finglas that my dad first discovered, before the village was swallowed up by the expanding city, I chatted with some of them.
You had Gofton Hall, which was Mrs. O'Donnell owned the pub in the village, the Widows they called her. Her husband was a merchant seaman, and the beautiful house that was there behind the bank now. And he brought home all these silks and carpets, and rugs and furniture from there. But it was a beautiful, beautiful house and gardens. That was knocked down, and replaced by the bank, which was an awful pity.
I remember the break-in. That was the top floods, and the other one was the bottom floods. That's what they were called when I was a sizzler. I think floods must have owned the two pubs, and the other one was known as the Widows. The uncle used to drink in the Widows. But that all changed too. Yeah. I think the bottom of the hill is still there, isn't it? That was the bottom floods.
At the Drake Inn, there was a grocery store there beside it, Higgins's. And as you went on up there, there was just a couple of shops, not an awful lot. And as you come up from there, there was, at Brennan's there was a dip down into where the Finglas River ran. And there was a family there who had a wooden house. The ducks were swimming up and down behind it. The Finglas River there used to flood a lot. And there was a man, and God help him, he was there on his own, and the furniture used to float. It was that bad. There was a little shop on the corner opposite the Drake Inn. It was a sweet shop, and it was owned by Mary Fagan. And when I was about 14, she asked me if I would work with her, which I did for a few years. I did 2 nights a week and a Sunday morning. I loved it. I enjoyed it there. But she was known as a very contrary woman. Nobody in mind would they agree with me. And beside that, then you had the post office, and you had the 2 Luby sisters there. And there was a phone box outside, and people used to come into the shop, into Mary Fagan's, to get 3 pennies for the phone. And if Mary was there, I couldn't give them out. No, unless they were buying something. So if she wasn't there, I always would do it all the time. And beside that, then you had a cottage, and the hens used to be running up and down. And this was kind of at the top of the village. And beside that, then you had Burke's bungalow. They were chemists in town. And then you were down the church. At the bottom of the village, there was Montgomery's butchers. And they slaughtered their own cattle. And all the lads would be around waiting to try to get the bladder to make a football.
Down bottom of the hill you went down there for the cheese, and there was a pub. And you went down to the cellar, and had this gorgeous cheese. Across the road, you could blood coming out the avatar from on a Tuesday and Wednesday. Where no one ever talked. It was just parts that was there, and they were really realistic people, I think. And I don't know where we lost that. We did lose it a little bit on the way.
One of the oldest family names associated with Finglas is that of the Emmets.
My cousin's owned a family tree, and it went back 350 years. And originally coming from the Vikings, the Emmets, the name Emmet used to be Hemmet. So where they used to live, for somewhere Paris City is in the village, it was called the Alley. And that's where the Emmets came in there first.
I was born Betty Elizabeth Emmett in the Quarries. It's on my birth certificate. And then it was the alleyway, and that went down, right down the back of Power City. There was the stream, and that was all full of all different people. Loads of Emmets. And that went right down the bottom of the village, and then came back up the village, in the middle of the village. That's where I was born, in this one room cottage all those years ago. My father was born in it, and he's dead many years, so that would have been over 150 years ago. That little cottage was still there.
There was no toilets and no facilities like that. So there was a hole in the ground, and the people all had to come out and empty their loos, everything into that hole.
We didn't have any water in the house. We had no toilets. We had no running waters. We had no bathrooms. We had one fire in what was called, we used to call it the kitchen, but actually was the sitting room.
In the snow time, they'd be sliding down the hill where Paris City is and the bridge going over, and it was just country. And they only had one little school. It was only bricks, and they were saying some of them went to school, they had no shoes. They went to school with their bare feet. So they had shoes to keep them up for Sunday. My grandmother had 11 children in that 2-bedroom cottage, one that was on the North Road.
I was young and living on the North Road, and there was only the 9 cottages there. Spine Cup cottages they're called. And they were called Spine Cup because they were built in a time there was a war in Africa, and it was called the Spine Cup War. And that's how they got the name Spine Cup cottages. But opposite the cottages, there was a big bank across the road, and in behind that was Moss Brennan's field. There was Markey's field. There was 2 Markeys. There was Markey's up to the or left of Markey's, crab Markeys, where your houses are built. Why they call them crab, I don't know, but that's what he went by. But we used to work when we were kids. We work in those fields during the summer. You'd be tinning turnips and mango you work for them. You get 6pence a week.
Everyone had their own, let's say, would have gardens then in the cottages where the shopping centre is now in the village, where the cottage was. My Aunt May, she got one there in 1935, 1936. She was the eldest of the family, my dad's sister. And they were first getting electricity in 1937 in the cottage, which she thought was fabulous. And they had a back garden, where the back garden was the car park now, where Deal's is. And they grew their vegetables, they had pigs, they had hens. That's how people survived. But then my Brennans across the road, they had a farm. And by the Finglas River, as you know, just come down the North Road there yourself. That's gone on the dual carriageway now. But they had a hard life. People said the good old days. It was hard on them.
My dad died when he was only 43. He died from pneumonia. And I don't ever remember him. But that was probably, we didn't have any money, we'd no income. The only income we had was, my mother had the widow's pension. And I think it was a pound a week, £1, 2 and 6pence. And in the winter, she would get what they call a fuel voucher. And I used to bring the fuel voucher back to school with the pram. And I used to walk from the school in Glasnevin down to Drumcondra Bridge. There was a fuel depot down there. And I'd get 100 rate of turf there, and I'd have to pull up from there home to Finglas Bridge. We had the gas, and I remember my mother used to put a penny in the gas meter, and she'd open the oven, and she'd put her feet into the oven to warm her feet. Well, I think she wasn't the only one that done that. I would say everyone that lived in Talcott Cottage would have done that, because everyone only had gas that time. They'd have an old gas heater. The toilet part of it, they were all outdoor toilets, and there was no back door on our house. There was only a small back window. You know, I often remember we'd go out to the barrel out in the summertime, that'd be, and we'd have a wash in the barrel, you know.
When we were growing up, we had nothing, but nobody else had anything either, so we were all in the one boat, you know.
My family connection would be my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, which would be going back to the early 1800s. The cottage you see down here would have been built back in 1849, and my great-grandfather had a part, and it would have been a labourer's cottage at the time. At that time now, Finglas was just a small little village. The river used to run through it. There used to be an RIC barracks just outside the wall here. That was destroyed back in the late 1800s. We still call our area here Barrack Lane, even though today's name on it is Wellmount Road. But we stick with the old name of Barrack Lane because the lane was, Finglas was full of lanes. You have the Barrack Lane here, you have the Waterley lanes back up the top. Over at the side of the bottom of the hill, you had the church lane. And then up here, the village gym, we used to call the inn lane, and the rats lane, as we used to call it back in them days. I grew up, I was born and bred in the cottage back in 1962. One of 12 children, Thomas Dano Lynch, and my mother Anne Lynch, Red 12 was.
I met my husband in the parochial hall. We got married, and this cottage belonged to his uncle, and he had left it to him. And when we came in, there was a big range there and a flagstone floor.
All these houses, all to the right of the shop here, it was just farmland. all the houses right up beyond Ballyman Avenue were farmland. It was a different landscape completely, virtually country. But we were on the edge of Dublin City here back in the 50s, and obviously again there was no traffic, there was no horses and carts. You see more horses and carts than you would cars, or people on bicycles. Lots of bikes.
Everything in that was done with the horse that time. Yeah, and goats. Goats were big. I remember there was an old lad living in one of the little cottages next door to the Mayville ice cream. And he used to have a herd of goats, and he used to herd them across into the field and bring them in at night time and milk them and do whatever he did with them. You know, white, all snow white goats were lovely.
When my mum and dad moved into the house on the North Road in the 1950s, this was very much the Finglas that they found.
There was a big bank across the far side of the road there, and you could stand up on the bank and you could look out all over Finglas West. There was no houses there. The only thing you see way in the distance was the roof of Kappa Hospital, and you'd only see that in the winter time when there was no leaves on the tree.
Before Finglas West was built, that same view could be seen from the upstairs window of our house on the North Road. And across where Miles played, we also played at the Finglas River.
We used to go down there, and I don't know whether you ever heard or not, we used to catch pinkeens in it. They were little small fish, about the length of your finger or smaller. And we'd catch the fish and you'd scoop them into a jam jar. And then what we used to do is we'd pull out sods of grass or clay, and we'd build a dam in the river and have our own little, wouldn't be swim pool, it'd be a paddling pool, be up about 2 feet, you'd have it high, and you'd be in paddling in that. That's what you'd be playing in, yeah, because there was no swim pools around anywhere. We used to go around all the fields collecting blackberries, and there was some man from town used to come out with a handcart, and he'd buy the blackberries off you. And there was a pump up the North Road, water pump. We no water in the houses. You had to go up to the pump for the buckets of water. But when you had your blackberries collected in the basin or wherever you'd have it, you'd put them under the tap, drain them off them because it made them heavier. And the man used to pay you by the weight. So the heavier they were, the more you got, tuppence or threepence, whatever it was.
Adding a bit of weight to blackberries for an extra few bob was about as close to crime as Finglas came in those days.
How could you have crime? Like, what was there to rob? It came about when the gas meters came in. So it was a camera and things like that. Then there was something to rob. There was nothing to rob in people's house. There was nothing. They had just the bare necessities. Now, the bigger houses had the orchards.
There was no crimes whatsoever. And you'd only see a garden now and again. He'd come up on his bike and you'd be playing football on the road and you'd run over the moss branches over the bank so that you could catch it. That'd be the only crime that was committed, was playing football on the road. And sure, there was only a car that only arrived every hour or so. That's all that was on the road.
Down here at Cardiff Bridge, we had these little trolleys, little wheels on them. You go down Jerry Moffat's Hill, all the way down, over the bridge, no cars. I remember Detective Phillips it was. And if I was coming back down from school down Jerry Moffat's Hill, was called at the time, he put you up on the crossbar, the bike. They were one of us. They weren't around the squad cars.
The local police were not the only ones to enjoy a good relationship with the people of Finglas at the time. The travelling community made frequent visits.
They'd probably stay for 3 weeks and then they'd be gone. And it's mostly on McKee Avenue, out there, along there. It used to be called the Lane. So it was known as the Tinker's Lane, because that's where they used to come with the oval caravans, and they'd parked them there for a while. And I remember there was one group used to come, I forget what it's called, but they used to go down to the church when the people coming out mass, and he'd lie down on the ground with his chest bare, and he'd have put a cement block on his chest, and his pal would break the cement blocks with a sledgehammer. And then they'd make a collection round from the people. He used to come there at least 2 or 3 times a year, you know. But other than that, there were no problem to anybody, you know. They were just ordinary people living on the move, and it's the life they choose.
There was the travellers were over there, and Ike Gray was one of them. And I'm telling you, I couldn't have asked for a better neighbour. She was brilliant. Now, she used to come over to me for water and that, you know. But her husband used to go up the north, and no matter what you brought back from the north, I got first choice, you know. And the husband used to tease her because she'd come in and he'd say to her, I'm putting a scarf around my head and I'll tell them all I can tell fortunes as well, you know. And she used to say to him, shut up or I'll make your hair curl, you know. But I remember coming one day to the house and she said to me, have you any news for me? I said, you feck off. No, I've no news for you. And she said, shut up now. The next time I come back, you'll have news for me. The next time she came back, I was pregnant on my 12th child. And I said, get away from me door, you witch. You know, I could slag her. And she said, shut up now or I'll blink the other eye and you'll have 2. And like, she was a great neighbour. They lived across and Johnny used to buy and sell caravans. And Aggie would be after moving into one caravan and doing it up. And then she'd say, and he sold it from under me. Then she'd get another one to do up, you know. But they were very good. And the lad and the young one, they played out in my garden with my kids, you know. But she was a great woman.
Among those considered great neighbours at the time were the Craigie family, the local landed gentry and owners of Merville Dairies. They provided much employment in the area.
The Craigie family were actually very kind people. This is what I was told by my father. They were very kind. They had lots of houses, obviously, around the area, like even down as far as Hillcrest, they would have had houses there. And they gave great employment to the people of Finglas. But as well as that, too, they were very kind people. At Christmas time, Mrs. Craigie would have, from St. Helena's, had gone around and helped people and given them presents and things for Christmas and things like that. And I think people felt that they were very good to the community.
They were very good to the poor in Finglas, Craigie. Very, very good.
This was a view, however, that didn't seem to be shared by the local priest at the time.
I remember there was a wedding of the Craigie family, which owned it, Merville Dairy, and they owned it a couple of farms, St. Helena Farm, they owned it a farm down St. Mary's, and they gave plenty of work to people from Finglas. And when the parish priest announced off the altar that no one was to go up and see the wedding, you know. Oh, he was banning everybody from even going up to look at the wedding. And I remember once at they used to have these things in the field, I forget what to call them. And Merville Dairy, Craigie's own of Merville Dairy, and they sent up a couple of boxes of ice cream. And the parish priest sent them back, wouldn't take them, because they were Protestants.
But the Catholic Church wasn't the only force at the centre of Finglas life. There was also the GAA.
There was the Ironside first ever club. You know about that. So that was down the alley. And that's where at night, it was on the weekend, because our little cottage was there and there was three things down, and you'd hear the music, to be having their céilí, and that was their enjoyment, as you were saying. All those years ago, I was only that age, so that was about 70 years ago. You know, they were dancing and singing in the old hall, and my father went on then. George Emmett, he went on to be one of the founders of Erin's Isle.
The three little cottages out at the back gate of the church. I don't know whether you ever noticed them. Three little old cottages together. And that's where my mother was born. And right opposite that now, there's the school is there now, but that used to be Erin's Oil Pit out at the back of the church. And my grandfather used to mark the white lines on the pitch before the match would be played. I remember that pitch well. The rivalry was the matches between Finglas and St Margaret's. St Margaret's were the enemy, even though they were only 3 miles down the road. There was a pipe band in Finglas, Dick McKee pipe band. My father was pipe major in the band, and they used to have this competition every year between Erin's Isle and St Margaret's to make money for the band. And the prize for the winner was a football. And they bought one football, and it lasted for years because the matches never finished. They always ended up in a handbag fight between the players, so they never had to give a prize out. But I say, there was nothing else in Finglas then, only the Gaelic.
Then, in 1955, another form of entertainment came to Finglas, the casino cinema.
I remember the casino opening. I was at the first film that was shown in the Student Prince was the first film shown in the casino, and there was a great singer in it. Mario Lanza was his name. He used to come in from all over North County Dublin. He used to come in a tractor and a trailer from St Margaret's, and there'd be 20 people, 30 people sitting on the trailer. They'd drive into the casino for the films.
The casino cinema was to remain open until 1972 and establish itself firmly as part of Finglas heritage. But one can't remember the casino without remembering Jim Emmett, or as he was fondly known, Nelson.
He worked in the casino as an attendant with the torch. And he banned more people out of it for talking. If you said hello to your person beside you, the torch would be on you and you're banned, don't come back again. So I think there was more people banned. That's how it closed up.
The casino, opening its doors in the 1950s, was a sign of a change in Finglas. The housing schemes of Dublin Corporation had begun to roll out across its green fields.
Finglas exploded then. It started to explode, the population coming out of the town, the tenements, they were coming after us.
declancreative.com.